Coronavirus surges in these days before Christmas. President Biden has a new battle plan. He will deploy 1,000 more U.S. troops to hospitals and send medical personnel to Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, Arizona, New Hampshire, and Vermont. The government will buy hundreds of millions of rapid at-home tests to be delivered for free to the homes of Americans who want them. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on the president's address to the nation this afternoon.
This is not a speech about locking the country down. This is a speech outlining and being direct and clear with the American people about the benefits of being vaccinated, the steps we're going to take to increase access and to increase testing.
The AP's Mike Gracia drills down on the new challenge brought on by the hyper-transmissible Omicron variant.
U.S. health officials said Monday the Omicron variant has become the dominant version of the coronavirus in the United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the Omicron variant accounted for 73% of new infections in the U.S. last week. That's a nearly six-fold increase in Omicron's share of infections in just 1 week. In some parts of the country, Omicron now accounts for an estimated 90% of new infections. I'm Mike Gracia.
The White House says President Biden's tested negative for COVID and will test again tomorrow after coming in close contact with a staffer who later tested positive for COVID. And we're learning of the first death in the U.S. linked to the Omicron variant. An unvaccinated man in his 50s in the Houston area. The NHL is beginning a league-wide shutdown Wednesday amid a rise in positive COVID test results among players. Former President Trump is suing New York's Attorney General, trying to end her civil investigation into his business practices. Gas prices keep falling. It's $3.
Hi, the Reverend on the line.
Okay.
This is a
Pastor, how you doing?
I'm cool, Santita. How are you?
Oh, boy. I am waiting to get to the end of the week.
I understand.
You know, I mean, actually, you know, I have a lot of things planned for today.
Okay.
I mean, and really, actually, while I'm away, I mean, I won't be away. I plan to go away, but I'm not going to be able to do that. And
Okay.
so there's that. But there are a lot of things that I've got to do over the holiday.
Its first execution.
Okay.
So that is, you know, just doing a lot of planning for 2022.
Yes.
And so that is that. And this has got me
Cool.
little under the gun. There's just,
AP News.
there's just a lot that goes into this show, you know.
Oh, I totally understand.
As you can hear from the shuffling papers right now in the background. Yeah. You know, most people have, when they have a show like this, they have a staff. And I do not have that, but I'm not going to complain about it because this is what it is.
Resulted in heavy delays yesterday, while the other Chicago expressways were lighter than usual, heavier. We're seeing that again today. Delays starting around the Stevenson. 18 minutes from 95th to downtown. There are two expressways splitting to the left, one local lane to the right. And it's getting heavy quickly. Outbound it's 11 minutes from downtown to 95th. The inbound Stevenson ramp. The inbound line is now back.
All right. How are your parents doing?
Stevenson.
They're doing well.
Okay, that's good. Please give them my love.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Did you share that picture with your mother?
No, not yet. Oh, I can't wait. But I literally want to see her face. I saw her on Sunday.
Where facts matter.
Okay.
And
This is John
I meant to show it. Oh, I'm sorry.
The principles that guide me are rooted in the simple belief that united
I meant to show it to her, but we started talking about all this.
with unique
Right.
foundation.
That was like at the top of my list, but that was like my giggle.
Inspires innovation, promotes
Oh my gosh.
growth for business,
So-
the workforce, and our community.
There is
When the
that.
entrepreneur's vision is developed and improved with the voice of a unionized workforce, you build more than just a product, you build a stronger future. I want to personally thank everyone who voted for President Biden. He believes in unions. Blue Collar Biden signed the American Rescue Act of 2021, which secures
All
veteran
right.
pension
Cool.
benefits. It funds
I'm
improvements of
always
indoor
trying to
air
pull some of these last minute,
and
thank
provides
you so
additional
much,
paycheck
papers
protection program
together.
loans to support small businesses.
And that is all. Little
10
something
seconds.
just before we go on the air.
5.
Show.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world.
Did you turn that up?
We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
It's the Jackson Show.
And hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing for all of the people who go every day and night.
Santita.
Yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. You hear my phone in the background, and I don't know what is going on. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Can you believe we're almost at the end of the year? And it's Christmas time, everybody. God bless you. And for those of our brothers and sisters who are not of the Christian faith, I pray that the spirit of Christmas will be with you throughout this holy season in which, as God would have it, the three largest, most observed religions of the world, I won't call them the major because everybody has their path to God, that we kind of meet in the middle here, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. And so for everyone, may the spirit of Christmas be with you, and to the Christians, Merry Christmas, everybody. All right, let's get right to it. We're going to be talking about Joe Manchin today. It turns out the progressives were right. You needed to twin Build Back Better with the physical infrastructure bill. And that did not happen. And so here we are. So let's talk about that today with John Nichols. And let's talk about the fears of an insurrection. Ex-Army generals from the Pentagon, obviously, have said that we fear an insurrection or a civil war in 2024 if we have another contested election. That's a big, big deal. You see former President Trump on tour right now. And now there is talk, some rumblings about maybe Hillary Clinton might reemerge. She appears to be the strongest person at this point. So what do you think? I want to hear your thoughts at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. You can text me at that number. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and the Santita Jackson and Friends page and WCPT's Facebook page as well. So everybody, please, let's get involved today and let's talk about Omicron, which is rapidly spreading. It's not causing hospitalizations at this point. Let's hope that it stays there. But let's talk about how we can stay safe in this holy season. How can we stay safe? We see that President Biden has come into contact with one of his staff members who has COVID. So we're going to be talking about that. What should the protocols be? Because we're now seeing in professional sports, more and more people they're vaccinated. They're more than 90% vaccinated in our professional sports, and yet we're seeing these outbreaks. In fact, the NHL has suspended the whole season until after Christmas. So what does that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean to be vaccinated? And should the vaccinated be should you continue to be careful? Because I've bumped into a lot of people who are maskless and they tell me, look, I'm vaccinated and boosted. I'm like, but you can still get it and spread it. More than that, you can spread it. Let's be responsible, everybody, whatever your status. So let's get right to it. WCPT is my home, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending everyone my love. And then we've got people all over the country listening to us: Arizona, Washington State, California, Atlanta, DC, Boston. We're getting notes from people from all over, and so we want to thank you for your support and continue to tell people about the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get right to the headlines before we get to the good news. Chicago will have a high of 42 degrees today, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 21 degrees, snow showers. I think you're going to have a white Christmas. Yay. The Dow closed down 433 points yesterday. The S&P 500 closed down 52 points, and the NASDAQ closed down 188 points. In the NFL, well, the Bears, they're completely out of it, but okay, it was Well, it was a solid season, although it was a losing one. God bless them. The Vikings 17, the Bears 7. In the NBA, the Bulls, boy, they have come roaring back, huh? All right, 133. The Bulls, the Rockets, 118, and the Timberwolves will be facing off the Mavericks tonight in the NHL before everything shuts down because of COVID protocols. The Wild, well, they didn't fare so well against the Stars. The Stars 7, the Wild 4. And as I shared, the NHL is on pause. They have paused their entire season for the entire league because of COVID protocols, and they will be resuming after Christmas, presuming that everybody is COVID negative. Wow. The Omicron variant, according to the headlines, is now the dominant coronavirus strain of the United States, accounting for over 73% of new coronavirus cases, less than 3 weeks after the first case was reported, according to the CDC. For the week ending Saturday, Omicron accounted for 73.2% of the cases, with Delta making up 26%. And it depends upon where you are in the country that you will see the sharpest rises in Omicron or Delta. Everybody, please be careful. In the meantime, President Biden, fully vaccinated and boosted, tested negative yesterday, days after he was in close contact with an aide who would eventually test positive for coronavirus. He will be tested again tomorrow on Wednesday, according to his press secretary. And the aide said it was a mid-level staffer who received a positive test result on Monday morning. And President Biden will be continuing on with his schedule, even as he is being tested to ensure that he does not have COVID-19. We will be asking Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Knighton about that. What if that happens to you? How should you proceed? There is a study, the Moderna jab carries a slight risk of usually non-serious heart problems, according to a study in Denmark. Myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, and pericarditis, inflammation of the tissue surrounding the heart after mRNA jabs from Pfizer Moderna, had been noted in vaccine study safety reports and small-scale studies. These reports led France, Denmark, and other countries to advise against the jab for people under 30 years of age. We will be asking them about that. Should you take the booster shot? Which one? Which shots and Omicron, is Moderna or Pfizer performing better? That is from NBC Chicago. Well, we're going to see what the data shows. That is something that is going to take some time, everybody. And so, what about California sued Walmart yesterday, alleging that the retail giant has been disposing of hazardous waste than 1 million items each year. The lawsuit alleges that Walmart has illegally dumped 159,000 pounds of hazardous waste a year in landfills in the state that are not equipped to handle the material. History was made, everybody. For the first time in American history, congratulations to this young lady. Emma Broyles is making history as the first Korean American and the first Miss Alaska to win Miss America. She was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and her mother is of full Korean descent, and her grandparents moved to Anchorage from Korea 50 years ago. God bless her. She will receive $100,000 in scholarships and a six-figure salary to aid her duties as Miss America. Beautiful, beautiful young lady. And we're seeing something really, really interesting that I must say, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. really started this movement on the Hill. When he went to Congress, he walked around and found that most of the statues were of Confederate heroes. Yeah, on Capitol Hill. Well, and so that inspired him to have a statue made of Rosa Parks. So she is the first African American in Statuary Hall, which is literally in the center of the Capitol. You have the most honored people in the United States there. And of course, he ensured that she would have the largest statue in Statuary Hall. Well, guess what? She's going to have some company. Mary McLeod Bethune will be the first Black person to represent a state in the National Statuary Hall collection in the U.S. Capitol in Washington. Wow, wow, wow. She's going to be representing her state. Can you believe it? We are so excited that she's going to be representing the state of Florida. Of course, she founded Bethune-Cookman College and was part of, if you will, the kitchen cabinet of the FDR administration. She and Mrs. Roosevelt were very close. They did a lot of great, great, great work together. And of course, she left her last will and testament instructing African Americans about where we should go and her hopes and dreams for us. God bless you, Mary McLeod Bethune. You deserve that. And our country deserves to have such an exalted figure represent us all. Pastor Stephen Thurston, teaching pastor from Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. And of course, the author of Mirror Moments. Everybody go to StephenJThurston.com so that with a PH, so that you can get this book. You need to be blessed by it. Put that under your Christmas tree. Pastor, how are you
That's
today?
it. I'm doing amazing, Santita. Always good to be with you.
Always a joy to be with you. I mean, we're at the end of 2021. We're moving to 2022. I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch because, let's get to
It's
the end
right
of the
around
year.
corner.
Oh boy, it's been a year.
Yes.
It's been a year. It's been a year. So
Yeah.
you tell me, what is the good news today?
Sure. Well, the good news is that you don't have to work yourself to death.
Oh, okay.
I've spent the majority of my life around individuals who are high achievers, 60 to 80 work hours a week. Those are par for the course. And seeing these individuals strive so hard, it gave me a perspective of how things should be, with my air quotes going, if I wanted to achieve my goals. Because the messaging that was constantly communicated to me was that if I wanted to be successful, I just had to work hard. And like so many others, I view pulling long hours, being exhausted, feeling drained and stressed out as normal. But the reality is that none of this is or should be considered normal. And what I framed as a point of pride was actually pitiful. It was after witnessing a friend literally crash and burn from similar behavior that I began the journey of embracing and practicing self-care. I began to value the importance of stopping every once in a while and just enjoying the moment rather than always rushing forward to the next spot, to the next project, to the next assignment. And the good news is that just because you spend a long time and a lot of time doing things the wrong way doesn't mean you have to continue. If you're exhausted from constantly pushing yourself, perhaps a few lessons I've learned can be of value to you. As we shift into a new year, hopefully we can shift into some new habits. First thing that I learned that you can hopefully learn is that you've got to maintain me time. Now, someone I know has a no work policy on the weekends. That means no emails, no working on projects, no meetings. They do nothing work related until Monday. And so I decided to try my own version of that, which has allowed me to schedule more time dedicated to nobody but me. And one of the benefits that I've noticed is that setting aside rest periods means that I was forced to get work done during my designated work periods. Second thing that's helped me is learning how to say no. Because whenever anyone asks me for assistance, being a pastor, people are always reaching to you. I would feel obligated to help. If I didn't give that person some of my time, I would then at some point begin to feel guilty. And even if the person didn't really expect my help in the first place, I would still feel as if I should have done something for them. Oh, but I've gradually realized that it's really okay to say no. I can't agree to every single request or help everyone who asks for it. I only have a limited amount of time and energy, so I have to choose how to spend it. Declining an invitation or request, listen, that doesn't make you a bad person. It simply means you're spending your time on things that matter the most in your life. Finally, you've got to learn how to respect rest. For the longest time, I was hesitant about taking holidays or vacations because it meant I wasn't working. And if I wasn't working, I wasn't making progress. And if I wasn't making progress, in my mind, I told myself I was being lazy. I felt the need to simply keep going. However, I discovered that when I learned how to step away from my regular routine, it gave me the opportunity to try some new things and explore, which often enabled me to see new ideas that I could integrate into my work and into my personal life. Listen, Daniel Kopke says it this way: quiet the voice telling you to do more and be more. And trust that in this moment, who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing is enough. You'll get to where you need to be in your own time. Until then, breathe. Breathe and be patient with yourself and your process. You are doing the best you can to cope and survive amid your struggles, and that's all you can ask of yourself. It's enough, and you are enough.
Amen to that. And that is, we've been told that, and I would say that, and I would say particularly as African Americans, that you've got to work harder. You've got to work harder. I mean, you're already told that you need to work twice as hard and be twice as good,
Twice as hard.
just to be equal to not the superior, not the white person with the superior scores, but just the average white person.
Sure thing.
And I think we miss a lot. I think that we are all, no matter what our backgrounds, I think we're missing a lot, and I know I am, and I'm planning to, and I'm changing that. I'm really working on changing that paradigm, because there is much more to life than work. And that what you miss with your loved ones when they leave is not the work. It's the time that it's the time that you didn't spend with them, or you laugh about the times that you did. I mean, that's so important. And I thank you for that. We need that going into 2022. We really, really do. When will you be preaching again? And give us your website one more time.
Sure. Hey, I'm doing something exciting for New Year's Eve. Me and my dad are preaching together at his church.
What?
New Covenant Baptist Church of Chicago. So it's going to be an amazing time, a fun experience. So people will be able to catch that on New Year's Eve. New Covenant Baptist Church of Chicago. ncmbc.com is the website. It will stream there. And then, of course, you can catch everything that I'm doing on my website, Stephen with the PH, StephenJThurston.com.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, my goodness. That's my parents' anniversary that night. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is so wonderful, because, I remember I missed the all-night services that we used to have at Fellowship. Remember?
Yes.
Oh,
I
man.
remember those.
From 6 to 6. And trust me, you guys, it was something special, because you had people were coming in and preaching. They had their hour, and boy, we just had 12 great services. It was just wonderful. Oh,
it was a good time.
Good time. But this is going to be fantastic, because you and your father have such a profound anointing. I just thank God that we're going to have the opportunity to witness you. Where is New Covenant, and how can we get there?
New Covenant is at 77th and Cottage Grove on the south side of Chicago. You can't miss it.
You really can't miss it. It's a beautiful, beautiful cathedral. You will love it, love it, love it. And they are a wonderful family, and they are preaching machines. It's about 3 or 4 generations of them. They just keep on coming. The Thurstons. Love you, Pastor Thurston.
Love you, Santita.
Oh, God bless you. Stephen J. Thurston, PH. Stephen J. Thurston with a PH, everybody. .com. Get Mirror Moments, and please get it. It'll be a gift for someone. We have got, we're talking about our health. COVID-19 is really opening the door for us to have discussions about our health. We're going to start with COVID-19 and how we can practice safety and live safely throughout this holiday season and going forward. We're going to have Dr. Deborah Verholden on with us shortly, but we have got Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist, and she does just that. She prevents infection. She shows you how to do that. Go to drnina.preventionist. drnina.preventionist at Instagram. You do not want to miss her postings. They just take it right there to you, for you, so that you can be safe. Dr. Knighton, now you're a registered nurse, you're an infection preventionist, you are a research clinical scholar at Case Western Reserve University. I don't know how many hats you wear, my goodness, but we need you to wear them all. We just found out that the president has tested negative. Oh, good, sending you much love today, sending you much, much, much love. And I want to ask you about this protocol. President Biden has tested negative for COVID. He had close contact with what is a person who is described by the White House as a mid-level staffer, but mid-level, high-level, it doesn't matter. He had contact with this person, and this person went on to test positive for coronavirus. Now, President Biden is getting tested regularly to make sure that he has not contracted it. But what he is also doing is he's keeping up his schedule, so he's meeting people. Now, it's interesting, when you meet the president, you have to test negative, no matter your vaccination status. You must test negative. Do you think that it is wise? Is it wise, although he's been vaccinated and boosted, is it wise for him to carry on a schedule in which he's interacting with people, or should he be quarantined?
So to be honest with you, I wouldn't.
Mm.
The only reason why I wouldn't is sometimes, and I guess when we say contact with the staffer, meaning were they in passing? Did they spend time together, within a small space? So I think that there's still questions, that we don't, or I don't have the answers to, that will determine how that would go. So I'm going to give you scenario one. So this is someone like, let's say, mid-level staffer. He spent, let's say 30 minutes or more with interacting face-to-face, unmasked, within a closed-in setting with no air exchange. Then I would say absolutely he should still be quarantined. And even if he tests negative, is vaccinated, only because, and when I'm saying quarantining, meaning like just being very cautious in regards to who he's around. One of the things that we've gotten very comfortable with, Santita, is saying, oh, well, if it's not COVID, then I'm okay. But we have to realize is whether you're vaccinated or not, if your body is having to work against the vaccine on the inside to make sure that you don't have an outward display of symptoms or you don't test positive, it still doesn't mean that not coming in contact with someone else's germs will still not lower your immune system. With him being as old as he is, you would assume that he would take more precautions for his safety just to make sure that he is okay and not at risk of having, bad outcomes and bad side effects from being out in the public and being around others. Because he does have multiple risk factors that are working against him, with us knowing that older adults are at higher risk of being hospitalized or death. And we're even seeing this now, even with older adults that are vaccinated.
I want us to talk about this, everybody, because what are the protocols? We're seeing that people in the NFL, if they've been vaccinated and they're asymptomatic, they're still not going to be tested. It's only when you present symptoms that you will be tested for COVID. And I'm wondering how wise that is. And of course, now we're discussing people, all Americans getting these PCR tests. We're going to have to, of course, get them. So we have to go to a website so that they can be sent to us. They said they will be available to anyone who wants them. In other countries, they're just testing you. You can just go on and take a test. Why is this a hurdle for Americans getting tested when we need to know our status? Whatever your vaccination status, you need to know whether you're COVID positive or not. You need to know. You need to know for all the people around you, for all the people you love, for the people who love you. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show, talking about our health. Of course, we'll be talking about the insurrection, not of 2021. People are expecting one in 2024. And then, it turns out that the progressives were right all along. They should have kept Build Back Better twinned with the infrastructure bill, the physical infrastructure bill. The social and the physical should have been twinned. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in right now. More of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Dr. Knighton, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, girl, I'm doing well. Whew. I mean,
you know what? It's
what's going on, sweetie?
The Reverend that was on before, he gave a word this morning, didn't he?
Didn't he? A Pastor
Yes.
Stephen J. Thurston II. Absolutely.
Okay.
He's Faith under 40
Oh,
for
well,
those of us who are on Instagram. Faith under the number 40. Faith under 40.
so Faith under 40. You know,
Mhm.
he was really, really good and, you know, right on target in regards to just what it is we need to be thinking about. Because you talk about sleep, right? And just the fact that you can't cheat it or being able to get rest. I mean, he had the word this morning. It spoke to me.
Well, you know, it spoke to me too, and just really, I'm having to get my life, everybody, back in alignment. You know, because I have workaholic tendencies, as I'm sure you probably notice, and but I've always been that way. I will work, 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 work. I mean, my father the reason he wanted me to go to Howard as opposed to say Harvard, he said, no, 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 no. He said, baby, you need to socialize. He said, that is as much of your education as anything else. And mind you, I got best personality in my high school class. He was like, that's great. But my father called me for the first 2 months when I was at Howard every Friday night to see what I was doing. He would call me in the evening, like about 5 o'clock, like clockwork, no matter where he was, from an airport. It didn't even matter. So, baby, what are you doing tonight? Do you have any plans for the weekend? My mother, he was home one time, and my mother said, just be quiet, let that girl study. And he said, no, she could have stayed and gone to Northwestern for that. Or University of Chicago, that's down the street. You need to have a full life. And I appreciate that more than I can say. I mean, I remember him coming to visit me a couple of, he had some events that he had to do, but he would come by the dorm and just, honey, you got to get out. You got to be with people. It's important. And you can't just work all the time. That's not the way life works. It's just
Absolutely.
not. It can, but
Hey, Miss Jackson, I still cannot get Dr. Verholden.
Okay,
You know,
we'll just try her.
agree.
Yeah, I mean, and then we can get so bogged down, Shanita, just in stuff, right? We just get bogged down in stuff and the things that happen in life, and you forget to find the joy.
It is, and it's so crazy too because just even with people understanding so much that's just going on, it's the clarity, it's the mixed messaging, and it's like you just need somebody that's going to finish telling the story. When I say finish telling the story, make sure that people are aware so they know how to move.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, people lacking that time, and they lacking, a lot of the things that are meaningful to life because it's like they feel like they're on this roller coaster with everything going on.
30 seconds.
And I even remember people being just told, like, hey, you know what? You don't go get tested if you asymptomatic.
That's what that's what the NFL is saying. You see what?
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. But it's almost like, okay, that's not what was preached early on, though. So it wasn't preached early on. Then it was like, oh, asymptomatic.
10 seconds.
So everybody go get vaccinated.
Stand by.
Now we know.
Oh, no. I want you to say that to people because it's very confusing.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm not saying that it's confusing.
We can change the world.
Stand by.
Change the world. Change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820. The nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want to hear your voices at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT, you can text us at that same number, 773-763-9278. We're talking with Dr. Shanita Knight, an infection preventionist, registered nurse, residential, she is their clinical research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. We're talking about holiday protocols. I mean, they're being brought to fore because our major sports teams are really beginning to struggle with COVID-19 positive diagnoses. They're just calling them the COVID protocols. What it is somebody tested positive, and maybe more than one, and they have to shut everything down. How about that? And so now we're hearing that President Biden has encountered a staff member, has had close contact with a staff member who tested positive. And although he's been vaccinated and boosted, uh, and he's tested negative so far, they're saying that he's going to continue on with his schedule, with his regular schedule, seeing people. Now, mind you, if you see the president, you must test negative. I don't object to that. Uh, and he's testing negative, but still, does he have enough viral load is he shedding virus? We don't know. In the NFL, even they have more than 90% of their players vaccinated, and they're not going to test vaccinated players. They're like, if you're asymptomatic, okay, but only if you're symptomatic will you be tested. Is that smart? Is that safe, everybody, as we're hearing about the Omicron variant that is surging across the country? 73% of those who are testing positive for COVID have the Omicron, although they're not being hospitalized for it. And so I want to know what your thoughts are. I mean, how do we conduct ourselves, particularly in this holiday season where we're all going to see each other, everybody? So let me send my love to Linda and Andre and Carol from the left coast, and Ashley and Daryl and A. King, Memphis, Maddie and Mark and Bernard, sending you all my love. D. Rays and Nobia and Joyce and Louis Chewy. And oh my goodness, so many of you today. Barbara Bacon. Oh, I want you, Andrew. I want you all to check in with us. And I want to hear your voices today, Barbara Bacon. Ashley King, want to hear your voices. 773-763-9278. 773. Hey, Nicole. 763-9278. Hey, Laura, how you doing? All right, Dr. Deb. It's Dr. Deb. I'm so accustomed to calling her name, aren't we all? Talk to me. I mean, what about these protocols? They just seem like they're uneven. That if you're asymptomatic and you've been vaccinated, you're okay. But if you're asymptomatic and you haven't been vaccinated, you're not okay. Is there a difference? And should everyone just be tested? Should we just know what our status is?
So that's the thing. What does okay mean, right? Meaning, for example, we know that now, and I've been saying this, the vaccines will help against clinically relevant symptoms, meaning, it can help you or decrease your risk of being hospitalized or death. But it does not mean that you cannot spread the virus. So when we say somebody is okay or they're not okay, are they shedding the virus and being able to spread it? And all of our hands, all of our noses, and all of our mouths are capable of doing so. So I want to be clear that we are all on an even playing field when it comes down to shedding and spreading the virus. How it affects our body may be different depending on if you are vaccinated or unvaccinated. With us knowing now that boosters are encouraged because the vaccines are wearing off or not working as well, then that does mean that we should all be thinking about, matter of fact, whether we're talking about test or not, Santita, you know what I tell people? Assume everybody got it. Mm-hmm. Assume everybody is infected. So assume you are infected and you don't want to pass it over to your mom or to your neighbor, and assume that your neighbor or your mom is infected and that you want them to not pass it to you. So what does that mean? That means practicing prevention, making sure you're cleaning your hands, making sure that when you are in unfamiliar places with unfamiliar people, you are masked up, making sure that you are distancing as much as possible, making sure that you are conscious about anything that you touch or come in contact with and how you interact with your face, making sure that your cell phone, which is your third hand, is being cleaned frequently, and that you know that cell phones are dirtier than a toilet seat by 10 times. So they're 10 times dirtier than the toilet seat. And this is something we put our hands on. We put it up to our face in our mask. We're sitting it down on counters. We do so much with our phones and don't realize how nasty they are. So I'm saying that simply to say that when we talk about what's okay and what's not okay, assume everybody got it. Assume that the vaccines will provide some protection against hospitalization and death, but understand that all of these things must work together as tools, and you should not be prioritizing one over the other. Hand hygiene has been around since the beginning of time, including in the Bible, as a way of being able to cleanse. It still is applicable to this day. So please make sure you are keeping up with those practices. Now, I greatly understand why the public is confused. Early on in the pandemic, we had limited tests, meaning that there were not enough tests to go around, which was one factor. But on top of that, you were told that if you were asymptomatic, meaning you were not showing any symptoms, you did not suspect COVID, even if you had been around somebody with COVID, you were to just automatically quarantine because there was a such thing as the majority of people being asymptomatic. Those people that are asymptomatic, which was over 50% of the population, may never show a COVID symptom whatsoever, and that these individuals should not get tested. That was the message early on. Then it ended up shifting to where, and then too, they were told that if you came in contact with somebody and it was more than 15 minutes or you traveled, you had to quarantine. So it was expected that you would quarantine for about 14 days and then come out, right? Well, now tests are more prevalent. People are out more, meaning that individuals are not working from home. Kids were going back to school. The environmental cleaning practices had rolled back. A lot of states, including mine, had curfews. So if it was past 10 p.m., you were not buying alcohol at bars and restaurants. There was a lot of things that were still in play before the vaccines came. Well, when the vaccines came, all of that stuff rolled back. So then it was told that when you were vaccinated, within the first couple of months of being vaccinated, don't go get COVID tested. So they told people don't go get tested. So we didn't know whether or not people were still shedding the virus because they told you not to go get tested if you were vaccinated. Now we're back to that again. So individuals that are vaccinated are now back getting tested. So if we have individuals that now realize that the vaccine will protect my system, but it may not protect me from getting COVID or carrying COVID, then that means that individuals are going to get tested to at least know their status. But my thing is this, in the times of where even now, the tests are not available everywhere. Assume that you have it. So that way you don't have to worry about getting tested. You just are concerned about not spreading it. Or assume that you don't have it and that you don't want it, and that you still want to prevent yourself from getting it, so you're practicing prevention.
Well, what about the NFL only testing people who are symptomatic? I mean, should they not be testing everybody, just testing just to make sure? I mean, because like I said, you have this staff member who's had close contact with the president, and he has tested negative. The president has, thankfully, thus far. But the fact is, you still don't know. And before you come into contact with him, you have to test negative. I'm not mad. I'm just saying. I just don't know what the guidelines are.
And that's the thing. Like, not everybody will get it, right? Like, meaning, it is like we know that, and we've seen that even early on, that people that have come in contact with individuals that have had COVID does not necessarily mean that they'll get COVID. So you can do it for precautionary reasons. The testing is a way, and I'm sure the White House has top-notch testing, more so than what we have. So you would assume that if that test came back negative, then it is accurate. And if he's being tested on a regular basis, then that is an indicator. You would also hope, more importantly, that he's keeping up with infection prevention practices. Now, when it comes to the NFL, my concern, and I've always said this, is we put so much emphasis on testing, not enough emphasis on prevention. So regardless of whether they are testing these individuals or not, and they're deciding to test half the team and only if you're symptomatic or asymptomatic, we are talking about contact sports. We're talking about sports where individuals are going to sweat. They are going to wipe their eyes, their nose, and their mouth. And they are all touching a common item, which is that ball, right? And they're touching each other. So my issue has always been is that we do not think about protocols. I'm still watching sports, and you're seeing football teams that are still dapping each other up. You're still seeing basketball teams that are still high-fiving, right? There's no timeout for hand hygiene on the court. There's no time for somebody to disinfect the ball just to make sure that we're decreasing the amount of germs that are accumulating on the ball. So there are so many things that are not being done. Do you realize how many droplets still on the floor? Yes, to somebody it might be an inconvenience, but why are we not doing halftime? Instead of taking a little sweeper brush to wipe up some sweat, why are we not cleaning the floor, understanding how many droplets fell on the basketball court, right? So these are all things that are not taken into consideration because everybody wants to return to this notion of normal, opposed to looking at the fact that we need to think about things culturally and not consequentially. It should not be circumstantial, right? To where we do things just because, oh, everyone had an outbreak of COVID. It should not be reactive. It should be proactive. How do we keep our players safe? How do we make sure that individuals are not going to spread it to each other? People are seeing people actively cough and wipe their nose and wipe their eyes while they're playing. I'm watching the game. I see it happen all the time. I'm seeing individuals even with like sharing microphones still. There's so many things that we're still doing that we're watching in sports that if people are watching this and these teams are supposed to model and be role models to kids, role models to individuals, how are they helping America right now, or how are they helping the public? If somebody's watching that, what do you think that kid is going to do when they're on the basketball court playing? They still think it's okay to high five because we've embedded that in the culture instead of saying, okay, clean your hands, guys. Or what you don't see is that we do clean our hands, but it's not happening. I'm at games. So we just have to think more about it. And I'm just saying, like right now, when it comes down to testing half the team and not testing the other, or allowing the team to go and practice, and then deciding after they've already practiced that you want to test them is completely irresponsible. They should be testing before practice. They should be making sure that they're doing protocols. Is everyone responsible for cleaning their hands and sanitizing when they're coming in? There are certain things that's just not happening to make sure that people are protected, in my opinion, as well as the fact that this is entertainment and it's put on a national platform and it is televised and it's just showing the public what to continue doing wrong opposed to what it is we need to change to do right.
Dr. Deborah Verholden is joining us, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. Whew, we've been talking about President.
Hey, Dr. Deb.
Dr. Deb, you got to help us with this because we need some policy help. And plus, you're an associate dean. So you shape policy, at one of the largest universities in the world. Okay, we've got the president who's tested negative, thankfully, for COVID, having come into close contact with a staff member. And he's continuing on with his schedule, and he's continuing to be tested just out of an abundance of caution. But I wonder how abundant the caution is because he is continuing with his schedule. The NFL will only test symptomatic players. I mean, more than 90% of them have been vaccinated. And we're just seeing, it's almost like a slide rule. So if you're vaccinated, you could be asymptomatic, spread it, and it's okay. But if you're not vaccinated and you're asymptomatic, well, then there's something wrong with you. What is safe? I mean, because I'm looking at D. Ray, who said, hey, I'm in an area that's vaccinated and it's spreading like wildfire where I am. I mean, that's what people are seeing. They're seeing the spread. People in my area, vaccinated, still getting COVID, steady spreading like the blob. That's how she put it. Dr. Deb, what are we supposed to do? I mean, and what about these tests that are now going to be available, but we're going to have to go get them? I mean, should they just not be sending out tests? I'm not throwing a lot at you, but help us.
Yeah, these are all great questions. Testing should be available to everybody. And I've been saying this the entire pandemic. If you only test symptomatic people, you will never get spread under control that way. It's just physically impossible. By the time somebody is symptomatic, they've been shedding virus likely for days. And everywhere they've been and every person that they've come in contact with is now potentially been exposed. So that you'll never get spread under control that way. You have to test people as a function of how much they're moving about, right? So you test people if they're exposed. You test people. I tell people, we call it cadence testing here. And I was really surprised. I had a very good friend in Baltimore who had a fair number of COVID symptoms. She works for a university, so she only gets paid when she works. And there, of course, the universities are closed minimally between Christmas and New Year's. So she was really concerned about potentially having COVID, being out of work for 2 weeks, plus the 10 days or so over the holiday break. And she said, "I've got to get tested. If this is not COVID, I've got to get back to work." Said, okay. I had a terrible time finding a place for her to get a rapid test. Instead, she ended up having to get a PCR test. The results did come back in 2 days, and she was, in fact, COVID negative. So she just has a cold. Yeah.
But Dr. Dan, exactly what you just said, though, and I'm just chiming in because that is the problem exactly right there. The fact that people will say, "Oh, I tested negative," but they are showing some symptoms, like their nose is running, they coughing, they not feeling well, and these people are still returning to work. And that is a part of the problem, right?
Pre-COVID, yeah, but pre-COVID, we already knew if you're sick, you stay at home, whether or not it's COVID. But people now have that was never a policy. A workplace never had a policy. If you are sick, you stay at home. They have policies now. If you have COVID, you can physically not come in, right? So, I mean, people should be at home if they're sick, period. But if you have COVID, you are required. Most workplaces require you to be home for 10 days from when you get diagnosed. That's actually policy at these places.
Right. But that's the problem is that they don't think, though, that so if I got a cold and my body is already compromised and I come in contact with somebody with COVID, that's going to increase my chances of getting COVID, even if I ain't had COVID before. So it's nuts that when we think about policy, that we're not even basing it off of symptoms, right? Meaning like if your nose is running, like the questionnaires, if you coughing, if you have a fever, because now it's the mindset that like people are, even if they are testing negative for COVID, they still showing up to workplaces with symptoms that can spread droplets of some sort to other and still make them sick. And so when we go back and we look at, like, let's say the fact that the flu numbers were low last year around this time, even in the middle of the winter, right? And, like, it's crazy just to think that we are, I would say, almost back at square one with illnesses and just kind of normalizing being back in the workplace because it's not COVID now.
Well, so then my question is, because Dr. Deb, you deal with policy and really what we should be doing. What should we be doing? I mean, it's hard to find these rapid tests, and the costs are, vary wildly and widely. What should we be doing? We are just a few days away from Christmas, and we're seeing some of our most high-profile jobs. I don't know how they're handling it. I mean, if you're asymptomatic, and a lot of people are, it's okay for you to walk around, particularly if you're vaccinated. We're only testing people who are symptomatic. I'm just trying to figure out, when I speak to my friends in Europe who get tested all the time because they can just go pick up a test. And we manufacture these vaccines so anybody can get a vaccine. In fact, we have so many Americans not even using them all for a whole lot of reasons. What about the tests? Dr. Zapp, what about the tests?
Well, I live in the community because I get to drive that change. We have community-wide testing available for everybody, symptomatic or not, free, no cost to you. You don't even if you have insurance and you just choose not to present your insurance card, it's free, paid for by the state. We've got 3 sites that are all located in churches, centrally located in community places where people feel comfortable. So I really feel for people who live in communities that don't have that, but they should be a demand for that. We were a demand for that. We were a demand for barrier-free, no-cost, community-wide testing. And we have it. And when it even looked like we got a whiff that the state were going to pull those funds, we protested and said, no, you can't. So I think every community needs that, and I think people need that capacity right in their own hands. But it's a good point. You know, before I actually tested COVID positive, I put myself in isolation just because I knew I had a symptom that I didn't even relate to necessarily as COVID.
Well, let me ask you this: would you have, would you have put yourself
before?
Well, I was going to ask you: would you have put yourself in isolation if you would even if you did not have any symptoms, just knowing that you would attend at an event where people had COVID? Would you have put yourself in isolation until you got tested? And then, how long after you got tested would you? Okay.
Previously, I would do a 4-day quarantine, self-quarantine, post-travel. And then I just got sloppy, and I relaxed my own practices, to be honest. And that's what I advise people to do, you know, because typically, after about 4 days, you will have, if you are exposed, even if you're asymptomatic, you will have enough viral load to come up positive on a rapid test. So that's been my recommendation to people. 4 days, stay away from folks, go get a rapid test. If it's negative and you don't have any symptoms, carry on. Because you can get a negative rapid test and actually it still be positive. The sensitivity of those tests increase as your viral load increases. But for most people, if you look at the measure is called sensitivity, and that's how well a test is at identifying someone who's positive as positive. The sensitivity sort of peaks around day 4, day 5. So I tell people, just take those 4 days. And I've got a fair number of friends who have elderly loved ones or somebody in their, close circle that is, of poor health or, compromised. And so I just think that's good practice. Give yourself 4 days, get a rapid test. If it's negative, you should be fine. I mean, at least that's sort of I think, a responsible way to be about it. And literally, this was the time that I did not practice that myself. So, again, if I had to do over again, I would have done that. But I just literally had the slightest little itch in my throat. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna mask. And I started masking in the house. And I stayed in my room until I got tested.
Very quickly, I've got about 30 seconds. Do you think gargling would have helped when you got home?
To be honest, probably not.
Okay.
Because when I went back and I like the fact, I convinced myself I was at that reception for 2 hours. When I actually went back and looked at my phone, I realized I didn't get in the Uber until 10:16, and I got there at 5:30.
Ooh.
So I was there for almost 5 hours.
But it could have been 5 minutes, right?
It could have been 5 minutes, but in 5 hours, I don't think you can gargle that away.
Yeah, oh no, I'm with you. I mean, it's in you.
5 hours.
Girl, it's in you. What'd you say? With all due respect, Senator Johnson, a gargle ain't gonna do it. Although you want to practice all of those protocols just to be as hygienic, to be as safe as you can be. Whew. Dr. Shanina Knighton, registered nurse, and the woman who's brought it all together for us, Dr. Deborah Verholden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. Just, I don't even know what else to tell you. Just everybody, please take care of yourselves. That's why they are here every day, up before they really need to be, trying to help you to get all the information that you need. We'll be talking with David Masiotra in just a couple of minutes about the insurrection that Army generals are saying, former Army generals are saying that we could have a new civil war in 2024 if we have another contested election. Back in just a minute. Dr. Deb and Dr. Shanina.
Yes.
Oh gosh, it's a lot. But all this is very confusing, you guys. You do know this, right?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, it's just confusing.
It don't have to be, though.
But Shanina, it is. You know what? I've been around the president this year. And before, I was concerned about getting tested before. And Bishop Carlton Pearson, God bless him, we were down in Tulsa. He came over to the hotel. He had arranged, because he could do that, he had arranged for us to go get tested, like immediately. He said, because you have to you have to test negative 2 days before we see the president, 2 days before we're in the room with him. And most of us who were in the room were not going to be in contact with him. We just happened to be, I was with Reverend, so we were going to be in contact with him. But even if you were in the room of about 200 plus people, you had to test negative in order to be in the room with the president. I'm not mad about that. I'm just saying, please, shouldn't everybody have that option?
I'm connecting Mr. Masiotra on the line.
I agree with that. I mean, especially in terms of germs, I just think the issue that we coming across is just the fact that it's the protective thing, and this is where we come down to the conversation of equity, right?
Oh, yeah.
So because he is the president, I'm sure that he is probably privy to treatments and options that the general public are not made available to.
That's right.
And that's the thing, stuff like that should be communicated. And when I'm saying it should be communicated, that's saying that our parents would say, don't do it. I feel like we gonna do what they do, right? And so we have to kind of keep that in mind with how we move. Even how I mentioned before, when you are looking at political leaders on TV and they are speaking at the mic and you watching the mic not be cleaned, right? Or you watching them like with gloves.
I also
And I mean, it's like you're looking at all of these unsafe measures, and it's like you have to practice what you preach. And especially when you are on a platform as large as that, when you are a leader in that regard, are you modeling to the public what it is they should be doing?
And the people who are cleaning, Shanina, do they know what they're doing? They use the same rag in many places I've been.
They do. I'm talking about, like, I've seen it happen where people are like, they busting the tables and they taking the same rag and spreading with germs just from one table to the other. And you know that people are talking all over those tables. So you absolutely right. There are things like that that's still happening. Not using proper contact time with stuff on surfaces.
That's crazy. Hold on 1 second. David Masiotra, I just need to hear your voice.
Hey, Santita, how are you?
Oh, my goodness, you sound fantastic. It's wonderful hearing your voice. How does that sound, Close May? How does he sound?
He sounds good, and then I also have Chappelle on as well.
Okay, let's bring her. Well, she's one of our favorites. We love you, David, but Chappelle cooks for everybody. Chappelle?
Yes, Santita, I'm here.
You want to say hello to Doctors Knighton and Dr. Deb?
Hi, Dr. Knighton. Hi, Dr. Deb. Dr. Knighton, you got us all over here ready for Christmas. Good. Auntie Veronica, who's probably listening right now, she was like, what are your protocols? I said, yeah, we listen to Dr. Knighton. Why are you playing with me? We already got everything together.
You know what?
That's good.
And the person who's responsible for frightening us to death is Dr. Deb, because after she met Dr. Knighton, she said, oh, girl, we got to bring her on because you don't have any idea what we don't know. See, this is what we don't know. Okay, bring her on. Frightened me to death. I called her. I was like, girl, what is this? She said, all the stuff that we don't know.
Y'all know something that's so crazy because, and I'm gonna just say this briefly too, but as people are traveling for the holidays, make sure that if you got to get inside of an Uber, you opening up the window.
Thank you. I crack open those windows.
Yeah, but tell them put that air. You're not getting no outside air, which means that they circulating the germs right around in the same car.
Girl, they don't know what recirculation. Nobody's supposed to know what recirculation is. What you talking about?
It's that button. It's that arrow that showed like the air moving around in the car. Make sure that button ain't on. The one where it's like a curved arrow. Don't hit that button in your car.
I mean, he became belligerent when I asked him to crack open the windows. And I said, okay. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, no, I had a nice. I hate to do it, but I had to send a little report on him. I was like, because I became a little anxious. I was like, well, I don't have to want to do some kung fu fighting in here. You're not gonna take me down. Oh no, because he was acting a fool. Okay, yeah, I said it. And I've never had a physical fight in my life, and I'm not accustomed to men in general. Quite frankly, I've never seen that. You know.
No, it's tough, and especially when you asking somebody to clean their hands to keep you safe, and they refuse to do so, or they looking at you crazy like you asked them something that's completely unethical and unlogical.
Mm-hmm.
I see it's happening all the time.
30 seconds.
Stand by. I'm going to come right to you, Dr. Excuse me, Chaparral, as soon as I come right through these, oh boy, through these, oh shoot. When I come, I'm sorry, I was pulling up some papers. When I come through these, the headlines. Okay, Chaparral?
Yes, Santita, I'll be ready.
I know we rolled you out of bed. No, should I say rolled you away from the stove?
10 seconds.
Dr. Deb, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending everybody my love and all of my people over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there. And of course, on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, along with WCPT 820's Facebook page. Everybody, I'm on IG, the Santita Jackson IG page. And just really, I'm getting more active as we go into 2022. And we're going to be talking about these Army generals who fear an insurrection, much like January 6th, but even they say it could be even worse than what we saw earlier this year. Can you believe that? That happened this year. President Biden and Vice President Harris have not been in office 1 year yet. What a year it has been. And then it seems like the progressives were right all along. They said we should have twinned. We are going to twin, build back better and the physical infrastructure to one another. And many people rained down on them and said, oh my goodness, you all you're holding up progress. And look at what has happened. Talking with John Nichols and David Masiotra about these issues. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines so we can get some of this good talk from David Masiotra. Chicago will have a high of 42 degrees today, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul will have 21 degrees, snow showers. It looks like you're going to have a white Christmas. The Dow closed down 433 points. The NASDAQ closed down 188 points. And the S&P 500 closed down 52 points. In football last night, well, the Bears are out of it. But the Vikings are in the money. The Vikings 17, the Bears 7. In the NBA, the Bulls have come roaring back. The Bulls 133, the Rockets 118, and the Timberwolves will be facing off against the Mavericks tonight. In the NHL, the Wild, well, they fell to the Stars. The Stars 7, the Wild 4. The NHL has paused their season until just after Christmas because of COVID protocols. Praying for all of those players there. Coronavirus, the Omicron variant is the dominant strain in the United States, accounting for more than 73% of the cases. And now we're finding that President Biden, thankfully, has tested negative for COVID, having had close contact with an aide who has contracted the virus. He will continue with his schedule because he is vaccinated and boosted, but he is continuing to get tested. And so everybody, now we're looking at these tests that we're looking for, and you are going to have to request the free test. Well, I hope that they can work all of that out because they should have the test as available to us as the vaccines are, everybody. And so, what about Emma Broyles? Who is she? Well, she is the first Korean American to win the Miss America title. coming out of Alaska, everybody. Her grandparents moved to the city from Korea 50 years ago. Congratulations to this beautiful young lady. She's won $100,000 and scholarships for school and a six-figure salary to aid her duties as Miss America. Emma Broyles, everybody, making history. We should be very proud of that young lady. And the civil rights icon, Mary McLeod Bethune, founder of the National Council of Negro Women and Bethune-Cookman College. We thank God for her today. She will be the first Black person to represent a state. She'll be representing the state of Florida in Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. Indeed, we had never had an African-American statue in Statuary Hall until Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. Pulled together the legislation, and his partner was Senator John Kerry, to put Rosa Parks in Statuary Hall, and he ensured that she would have the biggest statue in Statuary Hall. Why did he do that? Because when he went to Congress and he toured, he just did his own tour because he's got an historical bent. He found that most of the statues on the Hill and in Statuary Hall were dedicated to or were of Confederate heroes in the Union. Wow, can you believe it? So he said, we need to break this up, and that has been broken up, everybody, and so we're grateful for that. So let's get to January 6th. We're trying to get to the bottom of this, and we've not been able to do it. And so now you've got these ex-Army generals who are saying, hey, everybody, we really, really need to be aware because we could face an insurrection that would outpace what we saw on January 6th. What does that mean, everybody? What does that mean? And now you have got different people from the military who are weighing in on what happened January 6th. Indeed, there's a study that says that we are closer to civil war than any of us would like to believe. We're now seeing people from the National Guard who are saying, you know what? The military people are not telling the truth about how things happened this particular day. David Masiotra, this is a lot of very distressing information that's coming from our military leaders. And what does it say about the United States today? Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you and to your beautiful, beloved wife, Sarah. Talk to us. Help us to understand the state of our union. David Masiotra, the author of I Am Somebody, Why Jesse Jackson Matters, among other great books.
Well, thank you very much, Santita, and Merry Christmas to you, and Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to all of your listeners.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the news isn't so happy or merry as you've aptly summarized. I recently wrote a profile of a man named Christian Piccolini. I would encourage everyone in your audience to listen to it, or to read it, excuse me. Salon published it. Christian Piccolini was a neo-Nazi leader in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But for the past 25 years, he's devoted his life to anti-racism advocacy and also disengagement of white supremacists from extremist organizations. And he said that everything happening right now is the 1990s skinhead's dream coming true. And what that means is their dream in the 1990s was first the legitimation of violence in mainstream precincts of the Republican Party and right-wing advocacy. And we see that within various levels of the Republican Party, Congress people like Paul Gosar and Mo Brooks, and the culmination of it, one would hope, was January 6th. But when you legitimate violence as a means of political victory and persuasion, it's difficult to put that genie back in the bottle. So now, according to Robert Pape, who is one of the leading researchers on terrorism at the University of Chicago, 21 million Americans who support Donald Trump and believe that the election was stolen from Donald Trump claim that they support violence as a means to achieve their political ends. Another element to this, something else that the skinheads of the 1990s advocated, was infiltration. Infiltration of political and public positions with low barriers of entry. So that means police officers, military, correction officers, and positions like county election boards, town councils, and school boards. Well, that's happening. It started happening about 20 years ago, but recently we've seen the Washington Post, the New York Times, ProPublica, and many other sources confirm that it's happening at an expedited, accelerated rate across the country. So you have partisan Republican loyalists who believe that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president now occupying a frightening number of positions on county election boards and town councils and Secretary of State positions that will oversee who counts the votes. Simultaneously, of course, you have all kinds of states, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, the Carolinas, Wisconsin, Michigan, passing a number of voter suppression laws that will make it increasingly difficult for, first and foremost, people of color, blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans to cast a vote, but also disabled Americans and also college students. So heavily leaning Democratic constituencies. The bottom line is that the Republican Party no longer operates as a parliamentary party that adheres to the norms of our already weak constitutional democracy. So therefore, they're using every trick available to them to disrupt our system of parliamentary constitutional democracy in order to subvert it in their favor. And if that doesn't work, what these military generals are warning will occur is that those 21 million Americans that Pate refers to in his study will take action in the streets. And they will likely do so with at least the tacit encouragement of Republican leadership. Remember Donald Trump in the first debate with Joe Biden in 2020 said, "Proud Boys, stand by." The Proud Boys are a violent, radical right-wing hate group. Remember after Charlottesville, he said, "Very fine people on both sides." And referring back to where I started with Christian Piccolini, the Obama administration awarded Piccolini's organization a governmental grant when he was on his way out. One of the first moves that Donald Trump made when becoming president, it didn't receive much reporting, was the elimination of that grant. So we're playing a very dangerous game with white supremacy, white hate, and these people are ready and raring to go. And somebody better find the right combination of smelling salts to wake up Merrick Garland, because the Democrats, to quote Christian Piccolini, you've heard the phrase, "Don't bring a knife to a gunfight." They're not even bringing a knife. And there's a very strong likelihood that we will wake up one morning in November of 2024 with the realization that the candidate who received the fewer amount of votes, both in terms of popular and electoral college, will become president, and you will have mass demonstrations in the street because people will oppose that, and that will be met with violence by these various white hate groups and militias that the Republican Party are encouraging to grow and become active. It's an extremely dangerous situation.
We're talking with David Maciotro. His latest book is I Am Somebody, Why Jesse Jackson Matters, but you've got to pick up his books on Bruce Springsteen, John Mellencamp. You don't want to miss this brilliant, brilliant writer where you can read him frequently in Salon. I want to bring this to your attention, just to zero in on this for a minute. This is a report from NBC News, but of course we saw it reported on many different platforms. Former D.C. National Guard officer, Colonel Earl Matthews, wrote in a 36-page memo to the House committee investigating the attack that two Army generals lied under oath in congressional testimony about the military's response to January 6th. This to me is very dangerous, David Mathiotra, because now you're seeing it seems like the military is having a standoff, not only about what happened on January 6th, but about what actually happened in real time on January 6th. I mean, how cooperative, how embedded in all this was our military. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, here's another aspect to the danger, and here's where the Democratic Party and the mainstream media are failing us. There were grounds for suspicion as early as January 7th, because Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C., went on the record to state that she requested a National Guard presence on the ground on January 5th, because there was chatter that this large, massive Stop the Steal rally could turn violent. Now, typically, when the mayor of a city like Washington, D.C. requests National Guard presence, it's a rubber stamp job. But her call went unreturned. She called a second time the morning of January 6th, also unreturned. Once the mob, the insurrectionists, began to breach some of the dividers and storm the Capitol, the governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, who's a Republican, by the way, placed a call authorizing the Maryland National Guard, the National Guard available to Maryland, to go to the Capitol to protect not only the building, but more importantly, the people inside. And there was a delay of 4 hours. So immediately, our most aggressive journalists and our highest-ranking officials in the Democratic Party should have asked, why was Mayor Bowser's call ignored twice for National Guard support, and why did it take 4 hours to react to Governor Hogan's call for National Guard protection? And now you have, as you say, a very credible witness claiming that military leadership is lying about what happened. And one of those military leaders accused of lying is the brother of Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, who is a rabid right-wing Trump supporter. He's essentially a brazen fascist, because he's outright said that he doesn't believe in democracy and that he encouraged Donald Trump to declare martial law in order to stop the certification of the election. And he's a member of QAnon. Now, it's always risky getting into guilt by association, but there's certainly some smoke there when you have the brother of Michael Flynn, a right-wing extremist. It looks like lying to protect the military's failure to protect the Capitol during an attempted insurrection. And we have to determine, if there's smoke there, is there also fire? Now, I'm hoping that the January 6th committee is asking these questions and is diligently pursuing the truth. And when they find the truth, we'll make some criminal referrals to Merrick Garland. But of course, that remains to be seen.
David Mathiotra, I have about 3 or 4 minutes left here. What does this say about where we are in the United States? Bernard Wallace is saying, this is real. I was an officer in California for 26 years, and it is full of right-wing extremism. I watched it grow in real time. He said he didn't remain an officer. He was promoted and saw it at different levels. It's just, you heard a lot of chitter-chatter about January 6th, and you have people who are being subpoenaed by Congress, and they're ignoring the subpoenas. And you have President Trump, who is, it's like the Vichy regime. I mean, he's got another White House, and it's called Mar-a-Lago, and it's in Florida. What is going on here? I mean, what is our takeaway?
The takeaway is that we've played a game with fascism for far too long, allowing it to grow, allowing it to accelerate. To respond to your listener, Mr. Wallace, who is a police officer in California, I'm assuming that's what he meant by officer.
Yes.
Organizations like the Brennan Center for Justice, along with many compelling whistleblowers, have warned for decades of what I referred to earlier, citing Christian Piccolini, that right-wing extremists and white supremacists were infiltrating police departments. They were infiltrating the military. They were infiltrating prisons, not as prisoners, but as correction officers, and recruiting prisoners while they were there. This has all been public knowledge on the public record, and yet the Democratic Party, the mainstream media, and certainly the Republican Party have ignored it or acted as if it's not a problem. You might recall that during the Obama administration, a high-ranking official in Homeland Security released a report stating that the biggest threat facing the United States internally is not Islamic extremism, it's white supremacy, referring to just what I said and what your listener said, police departments, the military, corrections officers. For his trouble, he was fired. So we've ignored the tornado siren blasting overhead for years now, and now the cyclone is charging toward us, and we have to hope that we have time to take cover and it somehow misses us. But it's a very scary and precarious situation in which we find ourselves.
Does Joe Manchin and his, I guess, and his the way that he's behaving, even around his position on Build Back Better, is that like part of this? He sounded, little confrontational when he said, I'm from West Virginia, we don't take this stuff. I was being pushed around by the White House staff. And so that's why I voted this way. There's nothing wrong with President Biden, it's his staff. But we're from West Virginia, we don't take this stuff. It just seems a lot like a lot of factionalism here. These games are being played.
Well, it is a factional game on his part. And where did he say that? He said that on Fox News. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that you used to provide analysis and commentary for Fox News, so that doesn't mean that everyone who goes on Fox News is of questionable character, but it's certainly no secret that Fox News is the preferred network of the Republican Party and the right wing. So that's where Manchin chooses to make this announcement that he's not going to support the Democrats' domestic agenda. So he's playing a game with the right wing. And, I hate to say it, but Biden and Harris and Schumer are allowing him to do it because what they should do is strip him of his committee assignments. And, he's always putting out these threats that he might go Republican, he might go independent. I would say go ahead. See what happens in a West Virginia Republican primary when you have to run against a MAGA-approved candidate.
Please go.
See how that works out for you.
I'm with you. Go.
Yeah.
And, and I think the progressives ought to say, you know what? If you do not give us what we need, we're shutting everything down. That is what he's been doing. Most children in his state benefit from the child tax credit. More than 90% of them do. Shut it all down. Really. This is ridiculous. Here we're begging for crumbs, and he's a coal baron, and he is. I mean, come on, David. I got 30 seconds for you.
And use appropriate rhetoric. What Manchin is doing will result in more dead children and more sick old people. And Biden should give a primetime Oval Office address and say that, and then let him answer.
That's right. They have the vote. Put the vote, vote everybody, and let everybody explain their vote. That's what you need to do. McConnell needs to explain that vote to all those poor children in Kentucky. And you know what? Everybody needs to explain their vote. Tell us. Poverty's everywhere, and it's every color in the United States. Sending you much love, David Maciotri. You are a gem. We've got John Nichols coming up next on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Oh, David, you are the best.
Oh, thank you, Santita.
I could just hear you
I was
talk
a little
forever.
fired up this morning.
I love it. Please don't. No. That's why I let you go. Please, I love it. I love it, and you need to be, because this is really, really dangerous. Anytime you have these ex-generals who are saying, "Look, we have got a problem. We have got a problem." And these people they're gearing up for 2024. They're gearing up.
And you know that those generals are hearing a lot of talk from people from their contacts still in the military, because they wouldn't put their names on an op-ed in the Washington Post if they didn't have good reason for doing so.
Intel.
This isn't just a hunch. Intel's the word.
They know who they're working beside. They know who's still there. They also know what happened January 6th. We had Ray McGovern on the show, and he said, typically you've got 23 to 2,400 police officers, Capitol Police. There were only like 400 or 500 there that day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, look, I've spent so much time on the Hill, plus going to college in Washington, which is way before my brother got up on the Hill. Thank you. You could go to the Library of Congress, because this is back in the day prior to Google. So you would go up there if you needed to find, and you could go different to the Smithsonian's and all of that. And so you were able to do that. That's why going to school in Washington is really a great thing, because you have access to a lot of stuff. But you also got the sense, and this was in the 80s, just how secure and how secured the Capitol was. And at that time, you could still drive in front of the White House. Pennsylvania Avenue was still open. It wasn't blocked as it is now. But you felt very, very secure, and you did not play with the security. I mean, you just didn't. And I just think what they're doing.
National Guard.
Yeah.
They could have had National Guard. They could have had Capitol Police. They could have had County Police. They also could have had Park Police. I mean, there could have been a force on the ground that day that would have sent an immediate signal that there's no messing around.
This is
and
the DMV.
There was, cops in front of, what are those things called? Guardrails.
Yeah.
That the insurrectionists just pushed over, and some cops moved the rails for them. So that showed you where their sympathies were.
And somebody remember a congressperson took some of the rioters on tour the day before? I mean, the Capitol had been shut down since the beginning of the pandemic. So, get serious.
Yeah, there are so many layers to this, and it's such a contradiction to the response to the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020.
Please, let me tell you something.
All of the studies show that between 94 and 96% of the Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful.
But
it was under 5% that turned violent, and many of those were due to provocateurs.
But these folks
were on the ground using violence.
And these folks have been waiting to do this for a long time, and not just because of President Obama, the election of a black president.
30 seconds.
There's a lot that's been going on. Like the collapse of the economy in 2008. How about that? There are a lot of moving parts. David, hang out with for a bit. I've got John Nichols here. John?
I'm getting him up right now.
Oh, okay. But stay right here, because I do have a couple of callers. And
okay.
And when we get into 2022, I'd love to have you come back
in the next few seconds.
Okay.
Or we'll be back in 5 seconds.
We have Chaparral there. Chaparral, are you there?
I have John up.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay, come to the phone.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking with David Massiota. We're going to bring up John Nichols in a couple of minutes, but we're going to answer you have a couple of questions or comments about the insurrection that ex-Pentagon generals have been saying, well, ex-generals from the Pentagon, who are still wired in, who are saying, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. But you know what? We're getting ready for these victuals, this wonderful food from Celebrations by Us from Chaparral Wells. And you all have been calling her from all over the country. Chaparral.
Good morning, Santita, and thank you so much to all of your listeners. We have gotten so many requests, even if just to inquire about our services. We greatly appreciate it. And so right now, Santita, you know, we are working. We are working hard to get these orders out. But I just want to thank everyone for participating. If you've ordered anything from us, may God repay you for all of your efforts. And I'm telling you, Santita, we are still going into the New Year season, as well as also everyday catering after this. So we always have our masticcioli, mac and cheese, green beans, greens, smothered chicken, roast, as well as also our famous sweet cakes and pies. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546, and we look forward to serving you all season long. Thank you, Santita.
Love it and love you. I can't wait to get my food because I've already put my order in, just so that you know. You guys, I was late too. Oh, shame on me. Shame on me. Thank you, Chaparral. Before we go to John Nichols, let me go. David Matthews, just stay right there. I've got James from Chicago who wanted to weigh in on the insurrection. James?
Oh, you got me?
Of course we do. Yes. Hi, James.
Oh, thanks for taking this call. I admire your knowledge and your courage.
Oh, bless you.
January the 6th was continuing organized U.S. government terror. I haven't heard not one person in media call that so-called insurrection terror. It was terror, and they won't even call it that. The World Trade Center building was blown up from the inside. It was imploded. A lot of people know that. They got away with that. The federal building in Oklahoma was imploded. A lot of people know that. They got away with that. Now, Mussolini did not overthrow the power structure in Italy. The power structure in Italy put in Mussolini. Mr. Hitler did not overthrow. People need to understand this. Mr. Hitler did not overthrow the power structure in Germany. The power structure in Germany put Mr. Hitler in. They had even put him in prison for getting some people killed. They let him out. They let him out early. These people here are not overthrowing the power structure. This power structure is allowing this chaos and terror to continue. I suggest to the slaves here, if they can escape out of here. If you can get out of the country, because this is going to get worse and worse. You got people here can't do nothing about this, some these people running around creating terror, but they in a space shuttle. They in a space station. That don't make no sense. They could not destroy the so-called Indians without government. You must have power. Now, when George Wallace was running for president, the power structure said, not right now, George. Not right now. George Wallace said, no, I'm going to run. We're a racist country. I'm running. They said, okay, Georgia boy, we'll show you. Why? The power structure wasn't ready for George Wallace. They put him down. We need so-called black people, Santita, need a international human rights watch over them yesterday. Although the power structures control the UN, the World Court, the World Bank. But still, we need to let the world know that we're in great danger here and that we can be slaughtered at any time.
So you feel that this is a
U.S. government who's putting a blind eye on this terror.
Okay.
That is what's going on.
Well, you know,
and somebody needs to call them out. And we have no politician to do it. All those black so-called politicians ain't saying nothing. So-called other leaders. Barack Bush, one of your favorite boys. He know what's going on here. Why don't he speak out? You can't let this terror just keep growing, talking about some insurrection or they finna take over the military. Oh, Lord, what they gonna do? Come on, man.
No, you can't
speak out on this stuff besides somebody on a talk show.
You can't think I support someone supporting white supremacist insurrections now. You don't think I support that. but what about, hold on, because you can hear from Mr. James, um, his his pain and his fear. Because, my parents, who David, grew up in Jim Crow America, period. They, they grew up in the Jim Crow era. Let me get Art from Des Plaines very quickly, because I'd like you to react to them both.
Well,
Yes, no, please, go on and react to James. Yes.
I was just going to say that I disagree that 9/11 was an inside job, but I do agree with the caller about his larger point on terrorism. Now, the United States Army Manual defines terrorism very simply as violence with a political or religious purpose.
Well, that sounds like Black Lives Matter riots for the last.
Well, was that Art? Okay, well, that's okay. Keep on talking.
Yeah, January 6th was clearly violence for a political purpose. They were trying to stop the certification of an election. And to your point, Santita, yes, I've had the great blessing and fortune of getting to know your father quite well, and I know your mother too. They lived for decades under terrorism. I mean, January 6th, in that respect, it was new in terms of we've never seen an organized mob attempting to shut down through violence the procedures of democracy in our country before. However, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, sustained terrorism against the Freedom Riders, against SNCC, against black churches, against black organizers, often done so with the cooperation of local law enforcement and with state government officials turning a blind eye and federal officials turning a blind eye. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower in the 50s was the first to send federal troops to support a civil rights activity, but that wasn't the first time it was necessary. So, I share the caller's broader concerns about terrorism and your concerns about how we define terrorism and therefore how we react to it is often done so according to a double standard, even if I don't agree about the 9/11 attacks.
Absolutely. Very quickly, Art, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, every one of these people that have been charged in January 6th, not one of them had been charged with an insurrection. Not one. But they're all sitting in prison being refused a speedy trial. And it's clear the warden and the police department that they're being held in is a complete hatred for Trump and his supporters. And she is making everyone in that prison suffer when they have rights too.
Of course they have rights. And of course they're innocent until proven guilty. But are you concerned?
Yeah, but you're calling every one of them a bunch of white supremacists.
No,
what
I have not.
You have
Art,
these people are white supremacists.
Art, stop, because we're not going to talk over each other.
No. I listen to your show.
Art,
you call
put him
Trump
on hold. What we do not do here is disrespect each other, and I will not allow you to disrespect my panel or me. Now, you are allowed to speak here, but you have to do it in a way that is respectful. You do not shout at me, Art. We're both adults. Do not do that, or I will invite you to hang up the phone. I appreciate your listening, but we're going to engage each other respectfully. Now, is Art still there, Cosme?
He dropped.
Okay, he dropped. But that's all I ask everyone. Respectful engagement. Respectful engagement. And I've had to go into some lions' dens in my time. That having been said, my baseline is that I be respected and I will be respectful of you. Now, my respect of you, respectfulness toward you, is not contingent upon your respectfulness toward me. But I will leave if you disrespect me. And I will not allow you to be disrespectful here on this platform. We will not have it. I won't have it. So stay right there, because you hear Art, who is clearly upset. And the reason I wanted Art to continue speaking, David and John, is because there's half the nation is Art. I mean, that's just real. And, and the thing is, many of my white liberal and white progressive friends don't really get that. Black folks know it all the time. I know when I feel uncomfortable, and I know when it's time for me to leave a place. When I went to college in Washington, D.C., Chocolate City at the time. Okay? When the white kids got drunk in Georgetown, which is where everybody went to hang out and get some food and have some fun. When the white kids got drunk, you left. The black kids did. Because we knew that was going to go way left real fast. And it was going to get dangerous. Particularly when Reverend was running for president. And you were walking around with your Run, Jesse, Run buttons on. Okay? So I just think that we need to have an understanding, David Masiotra and John Nichols, of where we really are. Which brings me to John Nichols' wonderful piece on Manchin. It's like, wait a minute. The squad did know that Manchin could not be trusted. And now he's coming on, John, with this aggressive language. I'm not going to be pushed around by the White House staff. And I'm like, wait a minute, but what about, the fact that we vilified the progressives for saying, let's twin BBB, Build Back Better, with this physical infrastructure, because these guys are going to pull a fast one on us and we won't get Build Back Better through. And we're going to be back at square one. We're really behind that because more people will be hungry. More people will be in poverty.
That's exactly right. Look, Joe Manchin signaled very early on that he was not going to make this thing work. And this is a real failure on the part of the Biden administration and on the part of the Democratic leadership in the Senate.
Okay, now hold on one moment. We need to get your volume up, John, so that we can really hear you. Okay. Okay, go on, John.
They turned it up. Okay. Look, let's pivot out of what we've been on here, because I think that what the big problem that a lot of the analysis of what's happened is that it's been so personality based that it hasn't looked at kind of the deeper reality of what occurred here. And what occurred here was that the very, very wealthy, very powerful folks who influenced both major parties in this country, but had, in recent years been considered to be more influential on the Republican Party, looked at the reality that President Biden and Democrats in the House and Senate were in a position where they could actually make transformational change. They had the votes to do it, or at least they had the majorities that made that possible. And they decided to pick a senator, well, in this case, a couple senators if you include Kirsten Sinema, and use them as vehicles to derail the process. And Manchin was very willing to do that. He's a wealthy man who has increased his wealth and that of his family via connections with economic and political power over the last 40 years. And that was a clear reality in July. It's clear reality now. Nothing has changed. There is no surprise here. There's no shock. But where the failure occurred, and a deep, deep failure on the part of the Biden administration and Democratic leadership in the Senate, was to imagine that somehow a behind-closed-door insider negotiation with Joe Manchin would produce a positive result. And so for 6 months, and understand this, better part of 6 months, they've been negotiating with Manchin. We know from Debbie Dingell that President Biden spent over 100 hours, more than that, ultimately, with Manchin in direct communication. Think about it, having 100 hours to talk to the President of the United States. We know that Schumer spent massive amounts of time. All of these conversations, all of these quote-unquote negotiations, and yet there was no negotiation at all. At every turn, Manchin said, well, I don't like that. And then the White House or Senate leadership said, okay, we'll cut the program in half. Instead of 3.5, we'll go to 1.7. Manchin wasn't satisfied with that. Okay, we'll get rid of the family and medical leave. Manchin wasn't satisfied with that. Okay, we'll mess with child poverty efforts to end child poverty. Manchin wasn't satisfied with that. Again and again and again, he made it clear that he was going to derail this process. And yet they kept going with the insider backroom negotiations. Now, juxtapose that with what a handful of people said early on. Reverend William Barber went to West Virginia and said, no, we need to organize the people of West Virginia, create pressure from the grassroots on Manchin. Polling shows that people of West Virginia want these improvements in their lives. They want Medicare expanded, Medicaid expanded. They want free education. They want to address even the climate crisis, though West Virginia is a historic energy-producing state. They want all these things organized and make it happen. And some people listen to Reverend Barber. Bernie Sanders, in October, called Manchin out directly in Manchin's home state newspaper. Sanders was attacked for doing that, told that he was doing the wrong thing, that would somehow offend Manchin. But Sanders was right. And then in November, when you had the vote on whether to separate the infrastructure plan from Build Back Better, six progressives in the House. There are 4 members of the squad, along with their close allies, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, voted not to support the infrastructure bill. They didn't do so because they opposed the infrastructure bill. They did so because the infrastructure bill was being separated from Build Back Better, and they said, if you do that, you will lose your last bargaining chip with Manchin. Now, Manchin has, as we all know, signaled that he is not going to vote for Build Back Better. The truth of the matter is that Reverend William Barber, Senator Bernie Sanders, and the members of the squad were exactly right. They told us exactly what was going to happen. They showed us a strategy for how to avoid this. And those empowering the Democratic Party did not listen to them. And I don't want to be cruel here. It's the holiday season. I don't want to be too rough on anybody. But the reality is that the president and Democratic leadership of the Senate failed. And they failed because they didn't listen to progressives in their own caucuses, to their own best allies, who told them there is a different and better way to do this.
But you know what? We're talking with John Nichols, of course, the national correspondent for The Nation magazine. We're so honored to have him with us every Tuesday. And The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, that is his latest book. And boy, is it a book. It really helps us to see this through line of progressive politics and the fights against it, but the fights for progressive politics. You know, I have a lot of people calling in about you and about the insurrection. There's got to be some kind of tie here. Didn't mean for it to happen this way, but that wasn't on me.
Oh, there is
because I feel like there is, because I looked at AOC and the squad and progressives who were vilified for pushing up against these corporatist Democrats and these corporatist Republicans. And these are the people who kind of winked and nodded at January 6th, kind of, sort of. Right? And Charlottesville and on and on and on and on. No one came to the full-throated defense of George Floyd. We can just keep on going with this, John. And here we are.
The connections need to be made.
Okay. Yeah. I think the connections do need to be made.
The connection. But it's also easily made. It's not a complex thing. Democrats honor the tradition, the history of Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt was an imperfect president. He himself admitted his own imperfection. He failed on many fronts, but he tried. And he went bold at a time when others were not willing to do bold things. And so we often look back at Roosevelt and say, oh, well, he was all about the New Deal. That was why he was successful. That was why historic voting patterns shifted. That's why black voters who had traditionally been Republican voters shifted to the Democratic Party. That's why so many other communities across this country shifted to the Democratic Party. It was all because of the New Deal. No, it was more than that. Franklin Roosevelt always talked about accountability. He always held those who came before him to account. He talked about Wall Street and said, I welcome their hatred. He talked about Herbert Hoover and said that he had given the keys to the temple to the powerful and the wealthy. He talked about the failures of the Republican Party in early stages of the Great Depression. He also talked about the military-industrial complex. He didn't use that word. Eisenhower coined it. But he talked about war profiteers. He was very, very blunt in pointing a finger of blame and calling for accountability. They investigated Wall Street directly during Roosevelt's administration. We have not done that. And the bottom line is now we have a January 6th commission that a year after the event is starting to get some traction. I give them credit for that. But I will tell you flat out, the failure of President Biden and of many Democratic leaders in Congress to make a daily message of what happened on January 6th and to speak about it bluntly and in an aggressive way and to talk about the need for prosecution and the need for accountability. They didn't do that. They fell into the old trap of saying, oh, well, we'll just talk about our agenda. Well, that's a terrible error. And I'll tell you where it's really coming to haunt them in the worst of all ways, with COVID. Now, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump and the people around him mishandled COVID horribly. They openly, and at least in interviews and that, admittedly lied to the American people about COVID. They aggressively sought to downplay a crisis that has now killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, hundreds of thousands who did not need to die. And so their failure was massive. But it's a year out from that. And instead of talking about, in blunt ways, on a regular basis, about the failures of the Trump administration and its allies, now the Biden administration is kind of like, oh, wow, now we're in this crisis. We have new problems. The president's going to speak to the country tonight. He won't talk about accountability. And that failure to bring accountability into the mix is where ultimately the insurrectionists of January 6th, the person who called for the insurrection, Donald Trump, those who failed us on COVID, those who failed us on economics, et cetera, they get away with it. They get away with it because Democrats, top Democrats, fail to talk about accountability, not for retribution, not to be cruel, but because that's the way that you keep people understanding, the great mass of Americans understanding what has happened to them and why. And that puts into perspective the policy fights as well. So I'm very disappointed today, very disappointed in the way that top Democrats have approached the circumstances, because they've put us into a position now where I think this country is very vulnerable. Its democracy is vulnerable. Its health is vulnerable. Its economic circumstances vulnerable. And what a terrible place to be when you have Democrats, supposedly the party of the people, in charge of the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives.
And our leadership looks weak. It looks weak. I mean, I say this, last week, Reverend Jackson became a fellow at Cambridge University, and he got an honorary degree from there. That's the kind of leadership that is being honored all over the world, that kind of American leadership. The most popular elected politician in the United States today in the United States is Bernie Sanders. It's Bernie. It's Bernie. He was rejected by the higher-ups in our party, by the corporatists. Shame on us.
Well, you just Jesse Jackson and Bernie. You mentioned Jesse Jackson and Bernie Sanders, two people rejected, right? And yet, who do the people ultimately come to trust? Well, isn't there a lesson in that? And the lesson is that the Democratic Party ought to stop rejecting the counsel of those who actually have the trust of the people. And the counsel of the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the counsel of Bernie Sanders, the counsel of the squad, the counsel of so many good players who are trying desperately to make this thing work is A, you must hold the insurrectionists and the bad players to account, and B, when you govern, you must govern boldly, not with caution, not with compromise, not with backroom negotiation.
You can do it with caution, but you need to do it with courage. Shoot, go on.
That's right.
I don't mind incautiousness. No, be cautious, but go on.
It fails us, and it leaves an opening. I was on the phone last night with Reverend Barber, and I will tell you, Reverend Barber he's not giving up.
I've got 10 seconds.
He's ready to fight on. He's ready to fight on. So is Reverend Jackson. So is Bernie Sanders. But the fact of the matter is, someone has to listen to them at the top. This is the time where we really need a reset. And the reset ought to be one that recognizes that these prophetic voices should be listened to, not pushed aside, not neglected.
Absolutely. I mean, come on, everybody. What kind of leadership do we have here? And what kind of country do you really, really want? Let's talk about that. I'm going to have a couple more minutes with my guest on the other side of the break. But everybody think about that. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show on the YouTube channel, Santita Jackson Show and Santita Jackson and Friends. Back in just a hot second, but see you tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? I mean, David Masiotra, are you still there?
Yes, I'm with you.
You know, I mean, why don't you weigh in on what you heard John Nichols? I know you all know each other. Because it's really frustrating because I see a common thread here, David and John. I mean, when I see Joe Manchin and when I see him aggressively fighting for these corporate interests, when I go to West Virginia, which is such a poor state, great people, rich people, poor state, poor people. And he's not fighting for them. He's a coal baron. I see the corporate media not talking about his conflicts of interest at all. I see the corporate media, they won't even talk about the fact that members of Congress are able to make personal trades on insider information. And Nancy Pelosi said it was okay. That looks crazy. While people out here we're giving away food. Everybody I know who has a church is giving away food throughout the week. Everybody I know. And I'm a preacher's kid. I know a lot of folks with a lot of churches. People are out in pain out here. And you want to play a game on child tax credits, which expires this month. It's expiring. What do you mean? Why is that a non-starter for Joe Manchin? What? How are you, a coal baron, voting on bill? How is it that you're able? How is it that the media let him get away with his conflicts of interest? What? Why are we playing footsie with these people, John? David, talk to me.
Well, I was just going to say I'll make a closing comment. It's been really great to listen to John and great to participate in the program today. The Democrats have some trouble ahead considering that the child tax credit ends next month and student loan payments start again in February. And Biden never promised to forgive student debt. They couldn't move him on that issue. I wish they could have. It's the right thing to do. But he did promise he would forgive $10,000 off the top. And if he doesn't even keep that pathetic promise, this is just going to look worse. This continual damage that his reputation is suffering. And John, you asked me to respond to John. John was eloquent and brilliant, particularly on 2 points. First of all, when the Biden administration entered the White House and began to govern, there were two key crises, COVID and the right-wing war on democracy. In some ways, handled well. They improved vaccine distribution. They ushered through a massive COVID relief package. They've almost entirely failed to address the right-wing threat against democracy. And the connection we could make here with Build Back Better is polls show that between 80 and 90% of Americans don't know what is in Build Back Better. Now, part of that, Santita, is the corporate media's fault, as you were just explaining. But part of it is also the Biden administration's fault and Nancy Pelosi's fault and Chuck Schumer's fault. Gore Vidal said in the 1980s, half of Americans read a newspaper, half of Americans vote. Let's hope it's the same half.
Yes, you did say it.
Now, we would be fortunate if half. Now, studies show that it's around 20%, and that's in print or digital form. So the Biden administration needs to stop governing as if 100% of the American public subscribe to The Nation and read John Nichols' columns every week, or even subscribe to the New York Times and read their coverage every day. You need to take the message directly to the American people, and you need to tell them not only, as John was saying, what they stand to gain with Build Back Better, but what they stand to lose if these right-wingers continue to escape consequences and exert a painful, harmful influence on our country. One of my dearest friends always says, people fear losses more than they like gains. The Democrats should use that truth of human psychology to their advantage Do you want to lose the pleasure and freedom of living in a country where your vote matters? Do you want to lose the freedom that we've gained during a pandemic if we have to go back because the right-wingers are sabotaging it to the extent that they can public health? Do you want to lose the child tax credit? So that's what they should be doing. And the fact that they aren't, I wish I could disagree with John, but I agree. It's very disappointing and very troubling. And that's how I feel today as well.
John Nichols?
Well, I appreciate the good words there and the good insight. And let me just add, at this point, that the Biden administration doesn't understand. And perhaps wise people will cause it to understand this, is that they are set up for a massive defeat in 2022. And I don't relish saying that. It doesn't make me feel good to say that, but they are set up for a massive defeat.
Well, explain that. What do you mean massive?
So,
numbers?
Massive. Losing the House, losing the Senate, losing governorship, losing control of state legislatures, something akin to 1994 or 2010, where they will be disempowered. They will still have the presidency, but they will suffer real setbacks. And they will then have to deal with that reality. Now, when that happened under Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton ultimately ended up, cutting a lot of deals with Newt Gingrich and to some extent governing. When it happened under Barack Obama, it was much harder. They were far less willing to work with him. But still, he was able to manage through to some extent. In both cases, however, the ultimate playout was that the presidency shifted to the other party, to George W. Bush in 2000, to Donald Trump in 2016 after 8 years of Democratic presidency. Now, the reason I point that out is that George W. Bush got the presidency in 2000, despite losing the popular vote by about 500,000. Donald Trump got the presidency in 2006, despite losing the popular vote by a much larger margin, by millions of votes. Now, we look at the prospect of 2024. If the Republicans have a big win at the state house level and at the congressional level in 2022, they will set up a situation where in 2024, just no matter how much Donald Trump as a candidate once more loses the popular vote, even if he loses by 6, 7, 8, 100,000 votes, or 8 million votes, they will manipulate the process in a way that creates a real possibility that Trump will return as president. And that's what people need to understand. When you fail to make accountability central to your presidency, talking about the wrongs that were done, talking about the insurrection, talking about who's responsible for the crisis on COVID, when you fail to do that, and when you fail to govern in big, bold ways, you leave people in a point of desperation. Some will choose not to vote. Some will shift their vote. At the end of the day, the highly mobilized right will indeed rise politically. And in that opening created by Democratic failures, you have the very real possibility of a big Republican win in 2022, restoration of Republican complete control, White House, House, and Senate in 2024. That's what they should be thinking about. I don't want to be crass and overly political here. I care deeply about every aspect of Build Back Better and about the necessary care for the poor, the necessary care for people who need higher education, the necessary care for our elders, all the things that are outlined in that. But I got to tell you, it isn't just about the humanitarian side of it. It's about the fundamental political side of this. If accountability and action do not become central to the mission of the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress, with no excuses going forward into the start of 2022, then I can pretty well promise you they are going to suffer severe setbacks. And those setbacks do not just endanger us, physically from the standpoint of health and economics. They also, frankly, endanger our democracy in fundamental ways.
And I'll just make one more point. I recently wrote a story for The Progressive about all of the voter suppression laws that Republicans are passing in various states, and my story had a soft focus on the Carolinas. The Republicans in the state legislature are trying to pass a bill in North Carolina that would enable the government and the election supervisors to use a database of illegal immigrants in the state, cross-check it with voters to purge voters from the rolls. Now, John mentioned George W. Bush winning election in 2000. He won Florida when the vote count stopped under controversial circumstances by 537 votes. In 2002, the state of Florida admitted to the NAACP, because the NAACP filed a lawsuit, that they wrongfully purged thousands of black voters from the polls using a database of felons and cross-checking. And because of similarity in names, many people went to vote and found out they couldn't. So that's why Bush won the state of Florida. North Carolina is going to do the exact same thing with Latino voters. Now, right now, the only reason they haven't passed that bill is the state of North Carolina has a Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, and he has said that he will veto it. He's up for re-election in 2022. So what John's saying is, if the Republicans have a wave and they take out of power someone like Roy Cooper, the attack on the franchise is going to accelerate like no one will believe. And then his prediction, as awful as it is, will come true. We'll wake up to a second term of President Donald Trump.
I don't doubt it. Because they talk about him every day. You can eliminate someone from relevance by not mentioning them. He's been mentioned every single day throughout the day by the corporate media. Just every single day. Every single day. I mean, this is, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. I do not know what to say. I don't know if we know how serious this is. I don't think that we do. I don't think we know how serious it is and how deeply, when I heard Joe Manchin going on about the White House staff and what they did to him, and he's fine, that Joe Biden is fine with him. I'm like, really? So why would you go on Fox and do this? In what game? Beyond all that, why are you playing this game with children and women and men? Why are you playing this game with the people who work in the companies in which you hold all of this stock, that you're virtually an owner? Man, you helped to sponsor black lung disease. What are you talking about?
And the coal miners union has come out and announced their opposition
to what
his
he
refusal
did
to support Build Back Better. So even the coal miners are against him. His beloved coal miners. His heart bleeds for the coal miners.
Yeah.
And yet their union has released a statement saying he should support Build Back Better.
Just came out and said that. I read that in the Hill. I was like, whoa. So they've come out and they've said, because they know how desperately they need this. So, what are we doing here? And he routinely votes to support money going to the military that they don't even ask for. Wait a minute, while we're pulling out of wars. How is it that our military budget is going up and we're going out of wars? Would you explain that to me? Hello?
That's a big one. I'll leave that to John. I have to go. Thank you so much, Santita.
Sending you much love. Thank you so much.
Be strong. Go and do good. Yeah. And
likewise.
Quickly close off. Let me just quickly close off because I have to go as well. I apologize.
No. That's all right.
That's the bottom line. It's an issue of urgency. We saw at the end of this year that we had, a number of issues in play. We had Build Back Better in play. Well, we're told that can't happen. We had democracy in play with the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the initiatives by Amy Klobuchar and others to protect infrastructure voting. And we were told, well, we don't have the votes for that. So those things went by the wayside. But what did we have the votes for? What did happen? What came together with very, very little problem? Well, a $768 billion military defense, military budget, a military industrial complex budget that has huge amounts of waste, huge amounts of inefficiency, huge amounts of, just basic corruption and payouts to defense contractors. That got through the House without a problem. That got through the Senate without a problem. And the thing that I always point out to people is that the defense budget, the military budget, is for 1 year. And so if you extrapolate that out over 10 years, remember Build Back Better is a 10-year plan. You extrapolate out the military budget, that's $7.7 trillion. $7.7 trillion. And that's not accounting for inflation over the years. So let's assume that it does, that it keeps inflating horribly the way that it does. So let's say, we'll round it out. We'll say 10 trillion. That's pretty logical if you look at the pattern of growth in this thing, or even 8 trillion. Now, compare that to what Build Back Better has been reduced down to. Build Back Better, which is all of our social, progress that we're trying to achieve in areas of Medicare, Medicaid, healthcare, education, saving the planet, all of these things. Over 10 years, what the House was talking about was 1.7 trillion. So think about that. The urgency to spend exponentially more on the military industrial complex than on taking care of people here at home in the United States. That urgency coming not under a conservative Republican administration, but coming under a Democratic presidency, Democratic control of the House and Senate. At some fundamental level, we have to pause and ask ourselves whether the priorities are right. And I dare say that no, they are not. And in this remarkable season of the year, where we see the great religions of the world celebrate many, many different holidays, and so many of them coming back to a core principle, which is care for the poor, for the least among us. We ended up in a situation where, under a Democratic administration, we saw the run-up to the Christmas holiday taking care of military contractors, taking care of Wall Street, taking care of the very powerful, and yet letting child tax credits and programs to end child poverty lapse. That is a failed set of priorities, and let us pray in this wonderful time of year for a shift in priorities in 2022.
Amen to that. And that's not Scrooge, that's Pontius Pilate, that's Caesar. Because if I'm going to stretch my religious metaphor, because look, let me tell you something. You don't have to embrace Jesus as your personal savior to understand the historical Jesus and who Jesus was and the political Jesus and what the lessons that he sought to teach us. And at the end of the day, we have an obligation to care for each other. We are stewards over this earth, and we've been poor stewards. My pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, may he rest in peace, said, I've never seen God make a mouth he couldn't feed. I've never seen God have a vision without making provision. There's a reason that each person on this earth is here. And there is a path to our actualization that's laid out before us, but we stand in each other's way. Shame on us. Shame on us. And what we see, John, is a bipartisan betrayal. What we see is a bipartisan dedication to corporatism. That's what we're seeing. Yes, the Democrats and Republicans have their different cultural appeals, but at the end of the day, they have betrayed us. But you've got some great Democrats in there who are fighting. And these progressives said, hey, we need to keep Build Back Better and the physical infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure bill together so that we do not get thrown overboard. And that's what's happened. So we need to start learning how to play politics. And I'm not saying be vicious. I'm not saying be corrupt. No. But you should be like the Like these great leaders that we've had who have put it all on the line and who have fought. And that's what we need to do. You need to fight and fight hard and hold your position and do not play with your opposition. Think of the children and the adults that they have become. Children and adults, they all matter. We all matter. And everybody needs some help. Everybody does. Think about that. Think about that and get out there and vote. And call 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121, and let these representatives from all state let them know that you want Build Back Better. You certainly want this brought to a vote. So everyone who votes up or down on this legislation, let it be part of the public record, and then you start asking them questions. Ask them why they voted for it. Ask them why they didn't vote for it. That's what you need to do. Put people on point on this. So, John Nichols, you know I love you. Can't wait to be with you in 2022.
I look forward to it, my dear.
Oh,
Be
do you want to say
strong,
anything before you go?
Be hopeful. I'll just say be strong and be hopeful. Take care of your parents. Take care of yourself. We look forward to 2022, not with the dark and sad and frustrated thoughts that you just discussed because we have to be truthful, but with the hope and the vision that is grounded in history. History tells us that if we come together and if we put power in the people and amplify that power and do not blink, we can actually change any aspect of this world. Another world is possible. In fact, we see it emerging in places like Chile, where they've just elected a remarkable progressive government. We can look around the world and we can look around our own country and see plenty of reasons to be hopeful. But our hope should be grounded in an understanding that we have duties. And one of our duties is to be clear about what isn't happening at this point and what desperately needs to happen in 2022. And so I send you love and solidarity.
I send you love and solidarity. And I have to tell you, I'm actually very hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
Me too.
Because every action merits an equal and opposite reaction. And the fact that the Joe Mansions are fighting us this hard and the Senator Cinemas and on and on and on, it means that we are winning. We are winning every day. We have more progressives, stated progressives, who are in the U.S. House of Representatives than ever before. And you know what? These are people who, some of them, we ran with. Jamie Raskin was the first general counsel at the Rainbow. You can't make this stuff up. And then we get a chance to see John on network television and on cable television arguing our case. 30, 40 years ago, that wasn't possible. We're winning every day, and we just have to continue to push forward. Love you, John. Give my love to my family up there in Wisconsin.
And you give my love to my family down there in Illinois.
All right. Love you, sweetie. Merry Christmas. You too.
Merry Christmas.
Everybody, can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Thank you. Love you. I'll be with you until the end of the week. Go on, Carol. I'll be with you till the end of the week. Did you get those Hanukkah presents, girl, and those birthday presents? I hope you did. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Didn't everybody? Holy Day, your birthday and holy days, I kind of conflate them. You're like my brother. He was born in the Christmas season, January 7th. But he always wanted distinct presents. There you go. Love you, everybody. Love you. And thank you for being with us today. Hope you got something good from the conversation. God bless you. Bye-bye.